Hello, everyone. My name's Leah Fink, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live series, Your Life, or Your Mind, Your Reality, Your Results. Unfortunately, this week did not work for our show to be live, but we still did want to bring you some great content. So apologies that this is recorded, but we will still love you to engage. If you want to leave comments, if you want to ask any questions, we will get back to you. So please feel free to join us as we have this wonderful discussion today. We are going to be talking about emotional versus empathic selling. And here with me today is, once again, the wonderful Brent Keough.
Hi, guys. How's everybody doing? I'm excited to talk about this, and I'm excited to flip the script on this, Leah, and ask you some questions about emotional selling and with your path with your company, allthrive. So, for yourself, like when did this all start out? Tell me like your path on emotional selling.
Yeah, thanks for that. And thanks again, like I said, for being here. We had such a fun time last week that we decided we wanted to do this again for anyone who wasn't able to tune into that. But I really do recommend that. My path with this has started, kind of with my whole journey, I would say. I've been interested in personal development since I was a teenager. I've added to that a component of mental health, and that's now what I pursue is running workshops that support both personal development and mental health, really getting people in that place. And I found personally, as someone who is fairly empathic, who is very invested in helping people, it can often feel manipulative, or there's this whole word that we talked about with emotional selling. Like, as soon as you said that word when we were in a discussion the other day, I noticed myself go like, I've heard some not great things about that word. So that's why we wanted to talk about it today, because I think it's really important for other business owners, especially people who see themselves as empathic and ethical, to maybe make this distinction. Yeah,
absolutely. It's a topic I talk about for hours, and it's one of those things. As a sales professional, it's your words are used as a very powerful tool out there for people. And how do you see how people use it for the wrong reasons, and how would you correct that in getting them into the ethical side of things versus the, oh, well, he's manipulated me or she's manipulated me, so I'm not going to deal with them? Like, do you educate them?
Yeah. So I don't train salespeople, first of all. Yeah. I work with a variety of people, and they could certainly take the skills I use, and I work with entrepreneurs to help them get relational skills, let's call them, things that do help them sell because they're able to connect with people. And to me, that's the difference, is when you talk about emotional selling, or the perception I had of it. I think there are plenty of people who would call it that and use it ethically. I don't want to insult any of them, certainly. But when I think of the manipulative emotional selling piece, I think of people who are very attuned to other people. They do realize what other people react to, and they've trained to do that. And instead of embracing how that could help the person, they really figure out how they can use that almost against the person. So when someone is saying no, like last week we talked a lot about boundaries, and when someone is saying that hard or no, instead of taking that and being curious and being empathic with that person, it's actually taking that no and saying, I want a yes. So I'm going to use what I know about you to make it a yes. So to me, that's a bit of that boundary.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very true. I mean, emotional selling is impulsive selling. It's, how many times you watched the McDonald's commercial and you're thinking about a Big Mac? If not, most people are thinking about a Big Mac right now. Even their slogan is, I'm loving it. It's an emotional buy-in, the sales, right? Is it ethical? No, I mean, I'm going to eat it, but is it good for you? Yeah, sometimes. So, I mean, I think it's really based off of the necessity part of things. And if you know that somebody needs it and you can take advantage of that, that's manipulation, right? If you know they need it and they can afford it and it's something that's within their means, it's ethical selling. It's selling what's needed, right? If I was selling water, I would go in the middle of the desert and sell water.
Yes.
But no, so how do you tear that wall down then to actually, because some people subconsciously do it. as emotional sellers, like they're doing it and they're not even thinking about doing it because their mentors did it, or somebody that they've seen on television did it. And they thought that, you know, that car salesman that they watched on television was the way that they're going to do it. So how do you break people away from that like mentality? And even as a professional or somebody that has that kind of emotional buy-in, because at the end of the day, the pitch is the pitch. If somebody's pitching on taking them out for dinner, or, you know, convincing them to clean the house for free, there's some kind of emotional sell aspect of it. So like, how do you break the walls down?
Well, what we talked about, and why I chose the topic for today's episode, was really maybe moving away from this idea of emotional selling, which some people have used in this specific way, to empathic. And to me, the empathic piece is that you are really more focused on the other person and their goals than yourself. So if you're looking at an overall picture, or if people are wanting to gauge their own experiences, they're going through it, and they want to be aware and be practicing this, at what points in the conversation are you actually actively thinking, what does this person need? And at what points are you thinking, I want to sell to them, or this is what I need from this conversation? And I certainly know that I've done this myself, you know, as a young entrepreneur, as a newly budded sales professional in this role I'm now learning to be in. It's easy to get caught up in that thought. And in a way, I have a luxury of maybe I'm not as experienced here, so I'm not going to actually be able to do that manipulative sell in the same way. And as you get more experience, like you said, those people that maybe have practiced this, they've learned it years ago and they've been practicing it for so long, it might be harder to actually reflect and say, what have I been doing for which purpose? And when we look at this piece of empathic selling, it really does require some of those same skills, but you want to be able to read people and you want to be checking in about your impact. And we talked a little bit about this last week. I get very passionate about people actually tracking for their impact and making sure it's aligned with what they want. And in this case, aligned with a very values-based way, that it's about who they are and what they care about as a person. Once again, not just about the value of money, as it were. So a lot of the work I do when I'm helping people is more around, how do you understand someone on a deep level in a way you can connect so you care about them, not in a way so you can connect so you can control them.
So focus on the selfless method rather than the self-gain.
Yeah, and I think a lot of entrepreneurs know, you know, we talk a lot about, you know, giving value first. And, you know, you're certainly a great example of this as an entrepreneur. You are a very big value giver. You are trying to bring other people on the path alongside you. It's why I love working with you and networking with you, is because you very clearly have that as a value. And I do honestly think you can call it karma, you can call it just, it builds trust that people then do want to work with you. They want to support you as well. And so there's that piece.
Yeah, and that's a big thing for you know, a lot of businesses out there. And we were talking about the why last week as well, and behind emotional selling and empathic selling too. It's knowing your why is your most powerful message to your audience or your future audience out there. So being genuine is a big part of empathy. And you know, I talk about the sales mask before, and I'm sure you've heard that, you know, people wear different masks in different scenarios, and you know, it's about taking the mask off and actually have real conversations with people. How hard do you find people actually having to transition like that, where they because it's a vulnerable thing to be able to take off that mask and be, you know, empathetic and very understanding to that customer, the prospect, the person out there. How do you establish that with people and really show that you genuinely care and you're empathetic towards the selling process?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say the first step definitely starts with awareness. And we've talked a little bit about this in terms of personality and how you can take some traits that you know that you have that are your natural way of being, that are the most comfortable for you, and adjust them based on who you're with. Because you can either choose to make someone comfortable, and that is what helps create that bond of genuine relationship, or you can basically make someone uncomfortable. If you approach someone who is very relational in a very logical manner, it might not hurt them, but it might hurt your relationship. They might feel a lack of caring, or the opposite. If someone's coming to you looking for information and you just try to give them relationship, that's going to impact it. So the first piece I definitely think is building an awareness of your natural habits, and then being able to apply it to your relationship by looking at what that person is looking for. And then especially checking in, seeing if it's working. And once again, it's not manipulation. It's actually saying, am I helping you in the way that you're hoping for? And they're going to give you cues, and they're going to give you this feedback, and it's going to be them nodding, or it's going to be them stepping back from you. We talked a little bit about this, oh no, I don't want to talk to you anymore, is a pretty good indicator that you missed something. And then how can you use that next time to communicate with someone in a better way? I would say that's really what it is in a nutshell. It sounds really easy to do.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's always that easy. And I would actually say on the other side, though, it maybe could help people knowing that they're coming from that why, knowing that they're coming from that sense of purpose and caring, to also, on the other hand, be able to hold their value with people and not feel like a sleazy salesman, that if you're pushing someone, if you're asking them these questions, it's actually about asking them. And then if they're giving you these responses to these questions that are about how they would like your help or how they need you, it's still about them ultimately. It's not about that you forced yourself on some poor unsuspecting person and are making them think this way. It is a genuine curiosity and interaction.
And that's the thing. I mean, I went into, coming from the door-to-door world, is I never knew the person behind the door. And, my job was to be the entertaining one, to be able to, my life was a stage. So I had to get out there and put myself out there, be vulnerable. But by doing that, people became vulnerable with me. So it was like we both took off the mask, we sat down, and I built some amazing relationships with people that were strangers at the doors over the years, and business owners too. And it's, I know I could have got them to buy, and sometimes they couldn't afford it. And I'm like, you know what? I'll come back next year, right? Because I know that next year when I knock on that door, they're going to be ready. And for me, it's, when I'm understanding somebody, people tend to not forget that, versus, emotional selling, this whole roller coaster ride of putting people on this path. And it is manipulation if it's used wrong, but sometimes it's used for influence, being able to get people to spark that idea. And how do you do that? How do you get people to really, get that click in their head where they're like, oh no, it's not about me and making money, it's about the big picture?
That's not a deep question at all, Brent.
Not at all, but empathetic selling is a deep conversation.
It is.
It is.
And this is maybe a bit of a different awareness, but as people are contemplating this, are they truly aware of their values? I think is the first piece, and that's at a very core level. If any entrepreneur out there hasn't done the work on their why, I think that's almost an essential piece now, and both for your own inspiration as to why you're going to do the grueling work of an entrepreneur, but also especially so you know what is driving you, where you'll stop to do that in a healthy way. I think that's probably where I'd start with that question without going down a very long rabbit hole.
And it is value. I mean, it starts from within. I mean, I put value in my personality when I first started in sales, and it was always about positivity and maintaining that positivity, because I mean, I had times where I knocked on that door at 9 o'clock at night, and that's when I got my first sale, after knocking on doors from 1 o'clock in the morning or afternoon in the morning. No, not that. But like, it was always, I knew that, there was value within the system that I had. So, and that system became part of who I am. And I knew that as long as I could instill that value into other people, that the value would always continue to grow. Right. And that's empathy. It's like, for me is, I see people going down this path. I want to get them down that path to success quicker. And it's a selfless means of getting ahead. And
totally is.
Yeah. So for yourself, like, I know I want to backtrack on a question you were talking about earlier. You were talking about being uncomfortable, like in situations in sales. How many times did you buy from that person when you felt uncomfortable?
You know, it depends. Because to be honest, there's definitely places where I know that I have been manipulated or brought into a sale that I felt uncomfortable about after. Yeah. So I'm not going to say this is the hard part. That's why emotional selling works, is people have trained to make people go against their values, to overstep their boundaries in order to do that. And so I've certainly been taken in. Once again, as an empathetic person, it can actually be easier to manipulate us. That's a reality.
I'm a rooter for the salesperson. If somebody gives me a good show at trying to sell me something, I'm more empathetic to, like, emotionally bought into it because I see how hard the person's working.
Yeah. But once again, that's probably the person who's working and you still feel a connection, a value with. Even if their value is to get you to buy things, it's not to make you go against your boundaries, to make you go against what you care about. It's still, you're watching the hard work and enjoying it. You're still getting that connection somehow.
But what if they convince you to buy a car without talking to your wife or significant other?
Yeah.
Right? Like, the value is it on the low ticket item or the high ticket item? Right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, the ticket item that changes your life or not is really how I'd see that. Because, that car, if you don't have the money for a car and suddenly you've dipped into your kid's college fund, that's a life-changing item versus, you buy a vegetable peeler that you didn't want, probably isn't going to affect your life hugely. And once again, it's where that intention for that salesperson came from. And I think this is where people really need to be aware also, if they're being approached by a salesperson, I don't want to call it a responsibility, because it really should be the responsibility of the salesperson to be ethical, to be aware of these pieces, to not push that. But there can also be a responsibility of the buyer to know what's happening for themselves enough to know what's being bought into. And I would definitely say, as I've, grown more and understood more about sales, I can hold that a little bit better. I realize, this is what's happening for me. This is what they're playing on. And actually, I don't need to, put that at the front. I can realize that that's happening.
Well, back in the day, before the internet was a popular thing, 18 years when I was knocking on doors, they had, companies out there that, bought things for $200 and went door to door because nobody knew about them and sold them for $2,000. So you market, and people were buying it left, right, and center, right? I'm not gonna mention companies or anything like that. They're still around, but we have become so much more aware as consumers now, right? With the internet, with, like, I can search online and find something so quickly. So I think this, even if I'm having a meeting with somebody now and they're talking about software, I can be on my phone while I'm having a meeting with them and looking it up and finding ulterior methods to it. This didn't happen before. So I feel that's where the emotional selling is going to stop being manipulative in the future, as more and more people become aware of consumerism and finding the best deal. So how do you convince that group of people that's doing that right now to change what they're doing to be able to cater to the new age of selling in the empathetic world?
See, and I'm not actually sure I agree with you on that one, because the internet has been around for a while.
Yeah.
And I know plenty of people who could look up things in the moment and could look it up and have looked it up and still make the emotional buy. And I don't think that piece is going to change, because our emotions will always trump our thoughts. If you can get to someone at that level, you're probably going to get the sale. And the only difference that I would see with technology is that people are going to be more alerted to maybe the groups that are doing this, because we have more reviews and stuff. And that piece is actually kind of an ethical way of supporting buyers, because that's actually saying, don't trust this person. We talked about trust being the base level of selling. And so if someone's manipulating you into trust versus caring about you so you want to trust them, if you see something that breaks your trust, that to me is maybe where the future piece will go, is that companies will need to be more empathic in order to not get those reviews in order to maintain that trust. Because I know if I saw a 0-star Google review and it said this was the worst service ever, don't trust this person, he's manipulative, I wouldn't go for that. But if I'm in the moment with that guy and I didn't look at that review and he's being really persuasive in all these different ways, I might buy it because there's still that piece.
Yeah, it's true. And yeah, it's one of those, it's a double-edged sword. It's, you know, you can use it for good or you can use it for evil. And, yes. And it's all, I said it earlier, it's all who wields the sword at the end of the day. And as a teacher and as an educator in this, it's like I want people down the empathetic road, because to understand other people understand you more by doing that. And you know, the old age of selling where you have to have that tough exterior and have all these boundaries, like these walls that you develop for yourself, that's gone. That's gone. And if it's not gone in a person, I feel they should tear down the walls and really embrace the understanding rather than the money side of things. What are your thoughts on that?
I fully agree. Mm-hmm. I think Brene Brown puts it very well. If you've listened to any of her talks about vulnerability, and you can't selectively numb. And I think that's true as well, not just for selectively numbing positive emotions that come out of it, but also selectively numbing your ability to connect with others. And she talks about that. So definitely great talks to look at if you're contemplating this idea of vulnerability at all. Mm-hmm. I also believe that part of this empathic journey, or the real beauty of it as well, it does improve all your relationships. And I would hate to think of that emotionally manipulative seller in their personal relationships. Because if that's a pattern you are practicing all the time, that every day you are used to pushing people's boundaries or convincing them to do something that they don't want to do, and you come home to your partner, to your kids, what's that relationship like? Because almost all the things I teach are essentially about empathy. They're about self-empathy and understanding and caring for yourself and validating your own experience so you don't have to be horrible to yourself. Mm-hmm. And then, you know, your relationship with others, the empathy of saying, hey, Brent, I realize that you are reacting to this differently than me, and that doesn't make you stupid or bad or wrong, which is our natural state. That's what humans do. We decide mm-hmm. that we have the best way of doing things, and that is how we proceed until we realize it's not the best way of doing things. And often our conflicts and unhappiness comes from believing that, period, I guess, is, yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing. But that's the me mentality. It's you know, if you're focused on the values of like a collective whole, you know, kind of like what we do with how we build our networks. My goal is about collaboration and finding solutions to the problem. So where do you hit the hiccup at that point when all you're looking for is to help?
And so what can you define hiccup in that?
So basically the reason why they're not going to be emotionally bought into you in the future, whether it's from a monetary perspective or from a referral perspective or from a friendship perspective, because I mean, what it all boils down to is when we were kids, we were trying to sell ourselves on our friends to be friends, right? There's always, I got chocolate bars, like, you know, like, did I manipulate them, or did I just, like, you know, I want to be their friend, I'm going to give them a chocolate bar, right? Even as adults, it's, you know, like, I guess I kind of like, how would I word it? See, it's my first interview, guys. So yeah.
You're doing great.
I'll get back on that one. Okay. I guess it's not recorded live anyway. So
I know you've been doing too well. I don't know if I'll this is a vulnerable spot. That's okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to get. How do I word it? What question would you like me to ask next? Just we'll get off on this one, or do you want to jump off on a final point?
Maybe I could just do a final point and a closing.
Okay, so I guess we can edit that part out, I guess. So, So in closing then, Leah, like what advice can you give to young entrepreneurs, sales professionals out there to be more aware of the manipulation tactics and avoid those manipulation tactics and emotional selling, to focus on understanding and empathizing with their potential customers in the future?
Yeah, that's a very good closing question. First interviewer.
Appreciate it.
The piece I would actually say, because I don't like saying don't do this, I find that less helpful because you're just hearing the words of what it is.
Yeah, they're just you tell them don't do this. It's like a What
so
you
what
suggest? What would you suggest as an expert?
So what I would suggest for people is really take the time to do your own work first. Know yourself as well as you can and get feedback from different sources. Talk to clients you have worked with, talk with people in your networking group, and directly ask, how are you perceiving me? How did that experience go for you? Especially if you can talk with clients that you've already worked with or previously worked with, not just for getting a nice testimonial, but actually saying, was this a good experience? Was that a good experience? Did you feel genuinely cared for? You can track and you can directly ask for these things if you have a good relationship. And the more information you get there, the more you can use it for the future. So if someone had an experience of, Brent, I found you a little bit pushy in this case, it wasn't super comfortable, then you could go, oh, so maybe this tactic wasn't working. It might just be not working for that person, or it might be, I'll watch out for this one in the future and try to really micro-tune my work with it. And, you can keep developing pieces where you can get to know people quicker, right? I use personality typology to get to know people quicker and realize what's important to them. To me, that's not manipulation. That's a way I can support them the best way possible immediately. And then once again, always coming from this empathetic side. And it's really interesting doing this interview 2 weeks after I interviewed Joe Marcoux, because some of the work I do with him is actually about understanding objections. And I'm sure a lot of people, if they were to watch that interview and this, would go, that's kind of weird. You just said all of this stuff about don't manipulate. And so I'd really encourage people, though, to watch that video, because it does come down to these very similar points. As you are acknowledging, you are being aware of who you are and why, as we've talked about multiple times, this why you are able to help this person, how you're able to help them, how to approach them with curiosity. So that's what I would say. The more awareness you can have of yourself, the person in your relationship, the better you're going to be able to actually truly support them and not take advantage of them.
Wonderful. And I know you have a webinar coming up too as well. I'd love for you to talk about that.
Yeah, so slightly in tune with this, but maybe not completely. By the time you watch this video, it'll be tomorrow, Saturday, April 17th from 1 to 4 MST. And it is for women, and we're talking about boundaries. So if you are a woman and entrepreneur, female entrepreneur, sorry, and you have any challenges or see any places where you do have people pushing these boundaries, and you notice yourself caving maybe to pressure about your prices, you notice yourself working when you shouldn't because people are asking you for favors that you actually are not in a good place to support, I would love to have you. We'll put the details in there. We'll put Brent's details in here so you can contact him. I would highly recommend, because he is such a value-based, amazing salesperson. There is so much you could learn from him, and he will gift that to you. I can almost guarantee you will walk out of there with a gem having talked to Brent. So we'll put that detail in the chat, and please do, like I said, feel free to add comments, questions, and we will talk to you. Thank you guys so much, and thank you, Brent. You did an amazing job for your interviewing.
Thank you so much, Leah, and looking forward to working with you for many years to come.
Awesome. Bye, everyone.
Awesome. Take care, guys.